topic, thank goodness. So let's start with our next part of the meeting, our speakers. Our first speaker is Toastmaster Sean Tucker. Sean earned his competent communicator designation several years ago, and he's working now through several manuals freestyle. His speech today is out of the storytelling manual, and his speech is titled "The Most Interesting Woman I Ever Met."
The Most Interesting Woman I Never Met. I'm a handyman. It's a boring job. I work by myself most of the time. I have very little interaction with people. My wife, however, has an interesting job. She operates an estate sale company. I help. I'm the roadie. Now, some of you in here might be estate sale shoppers. Some of you might have had a reason to contract an estate sale company for some reason throughout the past. Most of you probably have little working knowledge of an estate sale, so let me help you out with something. An estate sale is not a garage sale. An estate sale is the liquidation of all of the personal property of an estate after someone has passed. It takes 2 to 3 people, 2 to 3 weeks working full-time to set up an estate sale. You go through every cabinet, every closet, every drawer, every item in this person's life you have touched after a couple of weeks. It is because of this level of intimacy with someone's worldly possessions, you get to know them very well, forensically. Fellow Toastmasters, guests, I would like to introduce you to the most interesting woman I never met. Now, some of you might have met her. She was local. Her name was Shirley Peters. If you attend the Orlando Fringe Festival, the Shakespeare Theater, the Orlando Rep, or any number of local activities, she was a regular and a supporter. But you would have come across an old woman, little old woman, probably on a cane, maybe a walker in her final days. These images of strangers don't always tell the whole story. In 1952, Shirley Peters graduated from college with a degree in nursing. She enlisted in the Army, did 2 years, got out, and went back to school, earned a second degree, and worked as an operating room nurse until the Vietnam War broke out. Her brother was a young Marine officer heading over to fight in the war. She called the Army and said, "Hey, I'm ready to go. Put me back. I want to go to Vietnam." The Army dallied for some reason. I don't know. Fate, maybe. The Navy commissioned her, made her an officer, sent her to work on a ship called the USS Repose off the coast of Vietnam. She spent the entire war working on that ship. On the day she got in country, landed in Vietnam, she was notified her brother had been killed in action. Shirley was she chronicled, she was like an amateur documentarian. She chronicled her time in Vietnam with handwritten journals, cramped little notes, long stories. She told everything that happened on that ship. She had hundreds, if not thousands, of photographs of her time in Vietnam. She had home movies of her experiences in Vietnam. She continued to do this her entire life. She retired from the Navy here in Orlando, and she traveled the world. She had an entire room of her house was full, floor to ceiling, with shoeboxes, each one of them a different trip. Each one contained hundreds of photographs, local currency, souvenirs. She even had a collection of jars of sand from every beach she had ever stood on. One of the most important collections, though, was the Wartime Chronicles. One of my wife's regulars is a vet named Jeff. He bought boxes of old photographs. As he was going through the photographs, he found a picture of a soldier lying in a hospital bed and a haggard Shirley standing behind him. On the back of the photo, it said, "Gunnery Sergeant Charles A. Perkins, United States Marine Corps. Do I look like I've been up for 36 hours with him?" And then a note about a blood drive that she organized on another ship to get enough A positive to save his life again. And then the time and date of his death. Now Jeff, being a curious fellow, types Gunnery Sergeant Perkins' name into Google and gets a hit on a website called the Virtual Wall. It's like a virtual Vietnam memorial. And on the post it said, I'm searching for anyone who was with Gunnery Sergeant Charles Chuck Perkins in January or February 1968. I know that he was wounded in battle. I know that he died on the USS Repose. But we were supposed to get married on his next leave in Hawaii. The post was 11 years old. Jeff thought, it's a long shot, but I'll respond. So he sends a message, and he calls Tracy, my wife, and says, hey, this is what just happened. Turns out Tracy and I had bought a lot of the journals that did not sell at the estate sale. We immediately started searching the journals. A little while, we found the dates. We found the stories of when Charles Chuck Perkins was on the USS Repose. He had been through several surgeries. When he wasn't in surgery, he had befriended several members of the crew, including Shirley, who had a special bond with him, probably because of her lost brother. We made copies, we sent them to Jeff, and it turns out Jeff had actually got a call back from the woman. She was living in Las Vegas and had never married. Chuck was the love of her life, and she had lost him 50 years ago and was looking for some closure that whole time. And had finally received a little bit of closure from an estate sale a half a world away 50 years later from a little old woman that you probably never noticed. There are lots of lessons you can learn from Shirley's life or this story. Shirley was a lifelong learner. At one point on the ship, she was bored. Being a hospital operating room nurse in the middle of a war, she got bored. She convinced the crew on the flight deck to teach her how to operate the signals. They made her an honorary member of the crew. At the bottom of a closet, I found a stack of classroom manuals for automotive technicians. I asked her best friend was the executor, and she said, oh, yeah, I remember that stage. Shirley was a lifelong learner. She never stopped reading, never stopped traveling, never stopped learning. There are lots of lessons you can learn from Shirley's life and this story. I just am glad you let me introduce you to the most interesting woman I never met. Thank you.